Welcome to you, and it's lovely to have you here today. I'd love to introduce to you Dr. Jackie Black, who is a marriage expert, educator, and board certified coach, and she lives in Southern California. I met Dr. Jackie some months ago, and immediately I felt connected with her, and I hope that you do too. I'd like to hand over to Dr. Jackie to let you know what it is that she does. Dr. Jackie, before we get started on what you do and so on, can you tell me, is there anything happening in your life at the moment that you would like to share that you find maybe interesting?
You know, I've been totally focused on, I'm not a cook, but I have been totally focused on eating better over the last year and eating clean, eating healthy things, not eating wheat. And so I, over the last couple of weeks, have been doing a lot of research. I can't believe I'm actually sharing this, that I've been doing a lot of research on standing mixers and food processors. And so last week, I finally made my decision, and I went out and I bought a standing mix master and a food processor. And at this time in my life, I am going to start to bake and cook. I can hardly believe it.
I think that's gorgeous. You know what? And it's never too late.
I was speaking to my daughter, sharing all of this. I was so excited. She said, "Who are you and what did you do with my mother?"
So, Dr. Jackie, really welcome. It's great to have you here. And I'd love to hear from you what it is that you do and a little more about, things that you'd like to tell people.
Yeah, thanks so much, Liz. I am a marriage educator, expert, and board certified coach. And I work with couples primarily. I work with individuals, but my focus, and I guess my passion, is to work with couples when one person is diagnosed or living with life-threatening and chronic illness, and couples in trouble. Our couple relationships are so important. They're central in our lives. We have our work lives, family life, and couple life, I think, is very much a part of our family life. And a lot of times when people have good relationships, it makes things better at work. Not always, but sometimes there's that crossover. And so I'm really focused on helping people to get out of trouble, to create that closeness that they long for. You know, life gets very busy and we get transactional, right? So that our relationships are about what are we doing? Where are we going? If we have children, who's going where to pick up whom, and what are all their schedules? And there are competing needs and competing priorities, and people lose track of each other. And so what I do is help people find each other, reconnect in really deep and lovely ways. Doesn't take a lot of time. I mean, it really doesn't. There are specific skills, ways to connect, and ways to stay connected. And so that's what I do.
That sounds like such a valuable tool, set of skills to have when in the corporate workspace. I know from my own experience that, well, really, I think I was just basically too tired for a proper and meaningful relationship.
Yeah, and it's interesting that you talk about being too tired, because the interesting thing that I find is that when people have specific how-tos, they don't have to think about it. It's not work. It's their default. The how-to, when they have a number of how-tos, it becomes their default. And they're never too tired because they're tired together. And so there's a way that they recharge themselves and each other, replenish together, regenerate, rejuvenate together.
So I want to hear more of this. You've obviously learned this over your own journey, and I expect that's involved many, many experiences. Can you perhaps tell us a little bit about your journey to this point of subject matter expert?
Yes, I was in corporate for a number of years, 15 years. I managed high-rise office buildings for pension funds, and I have an MBA from USC. And during that time, and through a confluence of events, I literally fell into the world of grief and loss. and helping a friend, interestingly enough, and met a speaker at a big conference that she asked me to join her at, and I was mesmerized. I was really sort of transported, and I thought, oh my God, that's what's going on in my life. And that's what's wrong with me, is I've been grieving. And I began to understand all of the little losses that we have in our lives that we don't pay attention to because we're so accustomed to barreling through and chin up and, you know, all of that to get it done kind of thing. And so I became very interested in the world of grief and loss and life-threatening and chronic illness. And so alongside of pardon me, alongside of working in corporate, I also became involved with the Association of Death Education and Counseling, ADEC, and just did a lot of peer stuff and other kind of learning, and found that it was very applicable in my corporate life. Did NLP, Neuro-Linguistics Programming, which at that time was not being used in the corporate environment. And so I think all of these things really helped me be a better manager of people and better negotiator, because I was listening better. I was bringing more skills, more heart-centered skills, more mindfulness to negotiations, to staff. We didn't have teams in those years. And I could see the stress that people were going through when something was going on in the office or at home or in the world. There were many things that were going on in the world that were affecting people very seriously. And so I decided that I would make a shift out of corporate and into really being a helping professional. I wasn't sure what that would be. And did a lot of investigating and research and dabbling, if you will, in different things. And then I thought, no, I really need to get I wrote a grieving book. I understood that grieving is a process, and that grieving is really about doing. It's about being, that there are no cognitive processes in grieving. Grieving is a wholly feeling experience. So I wrote a grieving workbook. But I couldn't get it published because I didn't have a PhD. And a couple of mentors at the time said, you really should go back and get your PhD. And I went, all right. Like, you don't do that in 5 minutes. But I really was passionate about the world of grief and loss, about getting my book published. So I did. I went back and I got my PhD. Of course, again, it takes a fair amount of time. And so by the time I did that, the world was full of grief and loss books. So I never actually published that book. I went on to write other books, but didn't ever publish my grieving book, but did get very, very deeply involved in the world of grief and loss, and then life-threatening and chronic illness. I was on the grief team, the national grief team, when the AIDS quilt was on the mall in Washington, D.C. And so I did a lot of teaching and training. Grief, I taught at UCLA. I did a certification program for California teachers about grief in the classroom, and helped teachers and school psychologists in those years really be able to identify grief and loss. And so when you're dealing with people who are sick, you're dealing with couples and families. So when I transitioned into coaching in 1999, I knew that I wanted to continue my work with couples and with families.
So that's where we are now. Wow, I cannot believe, I didn't know all of your history and how much there is. And I'm sure there's a great deal more than you shared with us just now. You're really very, very lucky that you've just decided to be part of Astra.
Oh, thank you so much.
Yeah.
Well, I feel honored to be part of Astra. And I'll tell you, when I was in corporate, I had wonderful mentors, empowering, supportive, inspiring, incredible mentors, all men. And I always hoped that I would be lucky enough to mentor women, you know, to be a mentor, and not just mentor women, to mentor men too, but there is something special about being a woman mentoring women, because I think we approach the world in a very different way. We approach people and problem solving in a very different way. And even though I was in corporate and focused on money. And we managed high-rise office buildings for pension funds. So still, it's about bringing ourselves and how we move in the world. And I remember those years. I'm old enough to remember the IBM women who used to talk, I'm maybe telling stories after school, but one of the things that they used to struggle with was how to maintain femininity working in their blue suits. They were very, very corporate. I had a little bit of an opportunity to have a little flair in the corporation that I worked in, a little style. I wasn't quite as corporate, if you will. But it really is something that we need to think about and talk about, which is how do we bring our intuition, right? Because that isn't something that is always welcomed or always understood. I have a lot of stories that when I speak to corporate women, I share about this, because I recognized early that if I wasn't bringing my whole self, if I was different at work than I was at home, and in my early years, I started off being two people. And one day I said to myself, which of those people is real, is authentic, is actual? I'm actually being myself. And the truth was that both those parts were me, but they were separated. And so I decided, I made a very conscious effort to bring those two parts together and to integrate them. And that was my first home-based company. I was an entrepreneur very early. My first home-based business was PRD, Personal Resource Development, Personal Resource Development. And what I did was try to help women to not lose their femininity in the workplace and not lose themselves and not lose all of the gifts that we bring as women to the world, to the workplace.
What is it that you imagine that you might bring to Astra, and the things that people can hope to see from you here?
So for me, Astra is really going to be a platform to be able to help people understand and to develop better ways of being with their partners when they're having trouble, stress, conflict, and if there's illness. Nobody expects to get ill. And we don't have any skills to deal with ourselves or each other if our partner is ill, or if our children or our parents are ill. And so living with life-threatening and chronic illness brings a completely new, I was going to say different, and it isn't only different, but it's new, a whole new plane of experiences that we have to get through, we have to negotiate, deal with. And I want to help people do that in a way that actually brings them closer together, not that tears them apart. People have different ways of grieving. People have different ways of handling stress. If a partner is ill, each person has a different reaction to the illness. My second husband and my third husband both had cancer, both passed away from cancer.
I'm sorry.
And thank you. And when the person who is ill is diagnosed, they have a certain set of reactions. And when we, as the loved one, hear that diagnosis, we have a different set of reactions. So we're worried about different things, and it's okay. A lot of times people don't want to be okay with their reactions. I'm afraid of what's going to happen to you. I'm afraid of what's going to happen to me. How am I going to do this? How am I going to contribute, participate? Do I have to? Do I have to? Do I have to do this? Do I have to do that? How can I do this? How can I do that? There are so many legitimate questions, so many legitimate challenges that we go through. And a lot of times, again, relationships become transactional, because the first thing that happens is you go to the doctor and you figure out what are you going to do. You get the diagnosis, you decide on a treatment plan, or you have to get some procedures. You may go to the hospital, you may have to get medication or lots of tests. So it really becomes getting through the medical system. I don't care what country you live in. There is a medical system to deal with and to get through. There's a process. And we all have different reactions to the process. We all have different stressors. We all have different resources. and strengths and gifts and skills. And if we don't mindfully and intentionally tap into those gifts and skills and tools and strategies and resources, and we don't have a plan, we don't have a way to be able to step up and step in, then we're frazzled. And that's what happens very often. So it's my mission really to help couples navigate the treacherous waters once one person has been diagnosed with life-threatening or chronic illness, or even if they've been living with it for years. There is help. That's my message. If there's one thing that I want to say, there is help. I can help you, and I really want to help you. I've spent so many years developing skills and tools. They're doable. They're easy to learn. Well, I shouldn't say easy. They're simple. It's not complicated. It's not rocket science. But it takes the desire and a real focus, a real mindfulness, to be open-hearted, to stay open-hearted and vulnerable and engage the processes that are important.
Open-hearted and vulnerable and processes. This is all starting to take shape, in my mind anyway, of a sort of a practical path to follow. Is this what you're offering?
Yes and no.
Okay.
And the no part is that there is no cookie cutter solution. There aren't steps. There are no. So let me tell you what there are, because that's what there isn't. So that's the no. The yes is that there are predictable experiences, and there are skills and tools that will manage the themes and patterns that arise. Fortunately, there are only 9 major themes in life. That's existentially. That's true for books and movies and cartoons. 9 major themes. So when we look at relationships, relationally, we have themes and patterns, and couples react and respond in alignment with the themes and patterns that are unique to them. So the first thing we want to do is understand what the themes and patterns are that are recurring, and then I help you develop the skills and tools that will be unique to your themes and patterns, and they're universal in nature, however, but they're unique to what you're dealing with, and they help. That's why they help, because they're not, you do this thing that is outside of who you are and how you live in the world. It's very aligned. And I think if there's one concept, when we talk about processes, the concept would be alignment, so that we're deepening and strengthening the ways you already interact, the ways you already engage, the strengths and resources that you already have as individuals and as a couple. And we're able to strengthen the ones that are there that maybe aren't well developed, that you haven't had to call on before. But there's nothing that I help people do that isn't already inside them to do. Brilliant.
Okay. You sound like the person we need in a crisis, or even potentially before, as things are looming. If just thinking, a friend of mine's just gone into hospital a couple of days ago with the possibility of a tumour. And I was just thinking how this, well, right now they could potentially be able to use your services to alleviate whatever it is they've got, that they're facing, or that they don't actually yet know they're facing.
Well, it's both things. You're very wise to see that. It's both things. So the thing that is happening is one of them is in the hospital, and some scary thing is going on. There's a scarier potential, but the skills and tools that they've been using may not be the skills and tools they need to bring forth to manage this mini crisis in the moment. And that's one of the things that I learned many, many years ago when I first fell into the world of grief and loss, is that right now there's a loss. There's a loss of the status quo. There's a loss of safety and security, even if it's momentary, even if it's temporary. I'll share a story with you. I have a very good friend and colleague, and we were talking about this one day, and he said, you know, I'm going to share something with you. And he said, and it's not pretty. They're skiers. They're very, very athletic family. They do winter sports and summer sports. And his wife got hurt skiing a number of years ago. And he said, I was the worst husband. I wish I had known you then. He said, and it wasn't that I didn't love her, or that I was selfish, or that I didn't want it. I didn't know what to do. I was so worried about her. I was all thumbs. I didn't know what to say or what to do. And he said, and it was temporary. We both knew that it was temporary and she was going to be fine. And he said, I can't imagine what people go through when they are in that period where they don't know things will be okay.
Oh, yes. I agree. I can imagine what he's thinking.
Yeah.
The unknown. Yeah. It's worse than the known sometimes, isn't it?
Yes. I think almost always the unknown is worse. And if we don't have something to replace the noise and the self-talk and the fear in our heads, that's the other benefit of doing this work and then having all of these skills to call on, is that you can keep those gremlins away during the unknown. You actually have processes that you can use to stay in the knowing, even if the knowing is fear. When Mark, my husband who died in 2005, when Mark was first diagnosed, I said to him, I can do this, but I can't be the martyr. I can't take care of you. I can't, it can't all be about you. You know, I can do this if we can face this together. I can do this if we can be afraid together. Some days you'll be afraid, some days I'll be afraid, some days we'll both be afraid. And he said, I can do that. And yeah, and because we can't depend on each other to be strong. We have to depend on ourselves. And when we each depend on ourselves together, can you imagine the strength that we both have together? Right? It's exponential.
I must admit that concept we deploy at home here, Jeff and I. If one of us is worried about something and the other one's not, well, that one holds the space for the vulnerable feeling one, and vice versa. We're lucky so far. It seems to happen at different times.
Yes. Yeah, it's a whole different bag when you're both treading water at the same time or feel like you're drowning. Yeah.
Yes, I imagine. Now, Dr. Jackie, we spoke about how you might engage in Astra, and we did come across the concept of online delivery via Zoom coaching center, you like to call it, don't you?
Yes, I love to call it the Zoom Coaching Center, Dr. Jackie's Zoom Coaching Center.
Lovely.
Although this will be the Astra Zoom Coaching Center. Yeah, you know why? Because we have relationships in real time. And so I think that training and conversations and learning needs to happen in real time, so that you can actually hear me talk about something, hear my tone of voice, watch my face as I demo a particular skill. It just seems to me to be more powerful, and it's more fun for me. So I think it's more valuable for people who are learning, and it's more fun for me. So that's why we do it. That's why I'm going to do it. Yeah, it is a win-win. Yeah. And so the thing that we've been talking about, and we'll see if our members are served by this. I mean, I'm always open to having people say, what about this? Let's try that. I might be better served by the other. But I'd like to do a Q&A, a 30-minute Q&A, where people send me questions over the month, and then I'll curate the questions. And again, many of the questions may be similar. There may be themes and patterns to the questions. So I'll look at the questions, and I'll create the buckets, if you will, and then talk about what the problems are, what some solutions are, what some skill sets, mindsets, attitudes, ways of being, different ways of showing up. And we'll do that for 30 minutes. And then we'll do something that's more engaging, which really I get excited about, which is hot seat coaching. And we'll do that for, I like 70, 75 minutes. I know it's a weird amount of time. 90 minutes is a long time. And sometimes 60 minutes isn't quite long enough. So 70, 75 minutes. It'll give me an opportunity to be able to do hot seat coaching. People will email me and ask me to put their name on the list. And I'll create a list, first come, first serve, and you'll tell me what the problem is. Usually I ask people to tell me what the problem is in 20 words or less. I don't want to hear the story, and during the hot seat coaching, I'll tell you why. But I really want to know, through the lens of a camera and a microphone, what is the issue? What is the question? And then do some hot seat coaching with members. I think that would be really exciting to do.
Exciting and very, very helpful, I'm betting, too, because I think sometimes loneliness is part of the problem with troubles in life, and you're giving people the opportunity to talk. And I know that's part of the solution for me anyway, if I have a problem.
Yes.
What do you think?
Right. And you know, when you're in corporate, you're a busy corporate person, people come to you. You are the go-to person. You're the resource person for a lot of other people. And so you deserve to have a resource. You deserve to be a mess and let somebody else help you sort out what's going on. And speaking of being a mess, I just want to say that there's a lot of research. It's anecdotal. I don't know if anybody's done longitudinal studies, but there's a lot of anecdotal information out there that the more successful corporate people are, the more messy their personal lives are.
Oh, okay. That's very interesting.
Isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's why, and I like that word. I use that word. It's right. It's messy when we're couples, and my clients really appreciate that. When couples are going through stuff, I don't call them problems or issues. We're in a mess. It's messy, right? And you have to be willing to be in a mess in order to come out the other side. So I use that same idea when I talk about the issues that corporate couples are a nightmare. But if one person is in corporate, it's very funny. They bring often a different energy home. They may have different expectations at home. There's so many interesting things. That and family businesses are another interesting dynamic, the way people set up businesses, set up families. So yeah, we can do all of that.
Fabulous. I relate to messy. I've had messy, chaotic.
Yeah.
So, and I guess it can all be tidied, is what you're saying, that you can get it to a better place anyway. So it's not so, what's the word, distracting. Yeah, and smoother somehow.
Exactly. Just what we want to eliminate the distractions, and we want to eliminate the things that are getting in the way of connection. Right? That's what it is. We're getting things that are getting in the way of connection. So we want more and more connection with each other.
And I love being connected with you, Dr. Jackie. To be perfectly honest, I'm really thrilled that you're here. And
thank you so much, Liz. I feel the same way.